Hey, Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, episode number 1534. We're continuing our coverage of the Solo novelization, the expanded edition of Solo, a Star Wars story, as it's been referred to. And today we get the introduction of Lando Calrissian, and we learn a bit more about this suave scoundrel in not just his own words or his own thoughts in the narrative, but also reflected by Kira. In fact, Kira is the one who ends up introducing us to Lando, and she says that he is referring to himself as a sportsman now that he's retired, or at least, he was retired until he got hired on for this job, and we find out that, maybe he's not so retired as he would like to be, or would like everyone else to believe. But there's also a moment where, as she's describing Lando to Han, she says there's no one in the galaxy like Lando Calrissian. And Mur Lafferty, who's the author of the novelization, has a line in there about Kira not disguising the hunger in her voice. And so you actually hear that Kira might have a bit of a thing for Lando, which of course sets Han's teeth on edge. Naturally, he doesn't want to hear that because he's still hung up on Kira, has been this whole time. And so, that's making him really uncomfortable. There's so far no indication of whether anything has happened between Kira and Lando in the past. And I have to imagine that the answer to that is probably no. It seems like, let's put it this way. I don't think Kira is the kind of person who would mix business with pleasure in that regard. Now, maybe she's somebody who would be able to keep the line divided easily enough and would certainly possibly maybe get Lando to be able to respect it, but I don't know, maybe not. Lando doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would necessarily want to respect those kinds of barriers, but you never know. I don't get the impression that anything has happened between them, though, but it certainly does seem like Kira is at least more than a little passingly interested in the prospect, so that adds some tension to the fire. And when we actually get onto the Millennium Falcon, we find how, we find that amazing cape closet, and there's a lot more to the cape thing than we necessarily realize. So you might recall in the movie when Han and Kira have a moment inside that closet and they get a little frisky and they're interrupted by Beckett and have to leave. Well, Lando comes in afterward, and this is a scene that isn't in the movie, and he is tidying up in his cape closet. So, whatever Han and Kira did to knock capes around on the racks or anything, he goes back in there and puts it all back in order and then decides that he needs to be wearing a different cape. And you get a whole page about his mentality about capes, and I have to applaud Mur Lafferty for this one because, my goodness, she did a fantastic job with getting inside Lando's head, and I absolutely believe that he is thinking this deeply about capes, about using short capes for quick encounters and long capes conveying a more regal atmosphere, and that you don't mess with somebody who's wearing a long cape. And, lighter capes are for more action-oriented situations, and heavier capes give him more of a sense of comfort. Not that he would actually, express the need for that to anyone or anything like that. And then there's, also reminiscences or, thoughts about the colors of the capes, and that it's very important for him to have color involved, that he doesn't really have anything that's not very colorful in that way. So it's quite the whole situation. It is rather amusing, to say the least. So yeah, he gets very cape savvy, as it were. And then the other scene in the movie, and there, I guess, was already one shower scene in the movie, so you could only have one to begin with, so it wouldn't make sense to do a second one. But there is a second shower scene in the novelization, and Chewie comes in and is talking with Lando, or at least says a few things, and Lando happens to have encountered a Wookiee stylist at some point. What are the chances that Lando has encountered, well, I mean, I guess knowing Lando, they're probably better than even, but Lando actually having met a Wookiee stylist of some kind, and so he understood a couple of words about being hair and tangled and matted, and he puts his fingers in Chewie's hair and feels that even though the top coat looks nice, that the undercoat is still a tangled and grimy mess. So what happens with that is more than a little amusing, and I'm going to tell you about it after the break and a quick word from our friends at Nissan, so stay tuned for that. Hey, Rebel Rouser, if you haven't checked out Nissan's Best in the Galaxy Customizer, then what's keeping you? Here's the link to do it real quick. It's sw7x7.com/custom. That'll get you right there. You can customize a Rogue, an Ultima, or a Titan, and give it a design inspired by the Millennium Falcon, by an Imperial Heavy TIE Fighter, Moloch's Landspeeder, or 4 other different designs. Check it out, sw7x7.com/custom. And hey, Solo: A Star Wars Story is now available on digital, and it's coming September 25th on Blu-ray and new in 4K Ultra HD as well. Welcome back. So Lando mentions wanting to, let Chewie use some of his different products and says, hey, you and I don't have the same kind of hair, but you can try out some of my stuff. But he starts to say, let me get some of my, and he doesn't want to say outrageously expensive, so he says personalized products. And, you have a moment where you're like, Lando's personalized products. What exactly does that mean? But there's nothing, scandalous about that at all. It turns out that there's something in there that comes from some extinct flower that unfortunately Chewie uses, and so Lando is going to be stuck with the memory of this flower and having it attached to the smell of wet Wookiee. But when he tells Chewie that he can go in there and try out some of his products, he wants to get, some of these, more specific ones out of there. But Chewie is like, thanks, and blows by him and goes into the shower and growls at him when Lando starts knocking at the door saying, hey, let me get some stuff out of there first. And in the novel, Last Shot, there's a line about how Han thought that Lando kept the Falcon way too clean and that he had to scuff it up and dirty it up inside to make it more like somebody would want to live in it, and that it was made a little harder by Chewie constantly picking up after him and cleaning up mess after mess. Well, apparently that's something Chewie learned to do over the years, because he absolutely does not do that in this particular case. He destroys Lando's bathroom, leaves hair all over the shower, all over the sink, leaves empty bottles of the hair product laying around, like he's tried a whole bunch of them and has like little squirts of stuff on the walls because like he just doesn't know his own strength, so he's like and blasts it all out, and it's a horrible mess. And there's clogged water at the bottom of the shower that's all brown and grimy from all the dirt in his undercoat and stuff. And yeah, I can see why they didn't necessarily include this scene in the movie. I don't know if it was actually filmed or not, but man, oh man, Chewie did a number on it. And Lando's like, mercy, what did I do to deserve having these creatures aboard my ship? And, in this particular instance, you can absolutely sympathize with him. So that right there is going to do it for today's fun look at the Solo novelization. And hey, if you are not subscribing to the podcast, yeah, this one's a little bit more frivolous comparatively speaking, but you know what? We've got a lot of other stuff to talk about coming up, particularly with Han and Kira, and also getting into the Kessel Run too. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to make sure you get the episodes delivered right to you. And if you are enjoying these episodes already, then hey, why not consider supporting me and the podcast as well? This is just me, by the way. It's a one-man show. And I am at patreon.com/SW7x7. That's patreon.com/SW7x7. But for now, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018, Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it!